Welcome everyone. Thank you for your lovely performances. They were all marvelous and really different and intriguing. So this section is just to sort of talk through your process and talk through some of the choices you made and maybe some technical insights and some of the aspects of the things you used and why you used them. And we will refer to some of the questions that came up on the broadcast. And but first, I think I'd like to start with Anne. Anne, would you like to talk us through your piece?
Yeah, I'll share my screen with you because I prepared. Oh, I think that's the wrong screen. Share screen. Here we go. Is that good?
Great.
Okay. This piece was. I'm not going to just read this, but so this piece is an older piece that has been reworked or continuously in the working. Let me show you a picture of the ensemble that. Wait, I need to open. There it is. This is the original setting of the ensemble with double bass, piano, electric guitar, analog synth, and bass clarinet. And we're an ensemble called Maze. And so it was when I was using a 6 iPad Java app that was able to have them interact via the app with this piece. The app has gone dead, which we could consider healthy, part of life, extinct. And I've then had to convert the piece. What it was the original setting was me reading these texts that are identical to what you heard, and the ensemble then playing in the interludes that I was playing the flute in the interludes. And then at the time I was reading, everyone turned their iPads around and they saw the images, the films, the clips that you saw. So that sometimes there were simply the words that would flicker around and the ensemble would play. And then sometimes, as I was speaking, there were the films. What happened in the evolution, and this document, which is now on my website, I can feed the URL through. It has the original trailer of that ensemble playing, and then it has a little bit of the history of what happened with the programming to bring it to the place where it is right now. This statement is very important. I am relieved that these device apps are stable and updated regularly, and that is Mira from Max or from Cycling 74 and the Kyma Control app. Well, it's something just to speak with my community on how, if you want to be adventuresome, how much trouble you're going to get yourself into, which is artistically useful and also inspiring. And then, eat it and accept it. The piece is a story which I assume you gathered, the same story told in 6 different emotions. And these emotions are, let's see if I must say this in here. Yes.
Yeah, you do.
Confusion, disgust, fear, rage, shame, and sorrow. And then the way the original piece was structured was that I would have a specific text to a certain player's film. And so these are all except for my hands that are doubled with the clarinet in a film. They're all men's hands, but I don't think you can recognize that. You just see this hand action, which is just brings up. It brings up whatever it brings up.
Yeah.
But the associations, I'm more interested to hear what it brings up in you, because as an artist, I simply had that situation that I wanted to present. One thing I was interested in that time, and I'm still very interested in, is that because I'm an improviser and a composing improviser, I'm and because I did a lot of my initial development in the 70s and 80s artistically, which was in America, in the United States where I come from. At that time, people were working on improvisation without having to use a climax as a structural device. And because I'm a performer that loves to get my audience wound up, I use climax because it's really useful. And so in this piece, what I wanted to do is structure the piece where the climax was out of my hands on some level. So what I did was I worked with a writer. I got lots of money to make this piece. It was just amazing. It was like I was way past 50. In fact, I was over 60, and I went into the granting agency and I said, "Can I get a grant for my personal development?" And the really young woman said, "Well, I don't know, why not? You could do that." So I got money to work with this writer and also to work with some Kyma people to help me bring it a step further. And what we did is we worked on phrasing the story with bullet points so that I could bring these emotions, or at least give them to you without having to act them, just be them in these situations. And how I built it is that through the Max Patch, it will trigger one of the 6 emotions randomly and go through all 6 emotions. So there's a set beginning and an end, but which emotion, which has a film attached to it and has a text match to it, those occur randomly, which means every time I do the piece, it's different. So what you heard was unique, and things were happening while I was recording, and I was thinking, whoa, where do I go from here? Which in that situation, when that happened, when that assault happened, those are the emotions one experiences in those kinds of situations. So that was a very interesting endeavor at the time when I built the piece. What's going on now is in the development of the piece, this piece that you heard now, is that because I wasn't just the narrator, I worked on a patch in Max this is what I see on my iPad, which you can't see the iPad in the film. You can see the little clip, and you can see I'm reading from there. And so what will happen is I'll press this next section button. This whole PDF is on my website now if you would like to refer to it. And so this next section will trigger a section, which I don't know which it'll be. And then what will happen for me as a performer, and this might be interesting to people who are trying to find ways to perform, but yet stay off, but have some warning signals in their structure, is I had read these and timed each one, and also because the films go on and they're loops, so I can have them go on and off in however I want. But I timed how long it would take to read this in a certain way, and so I get a warning. What will go on is this text clock will turn on, and I will see like a countdown from like 30 to 1. So I'll know how to sort of parse my timing and think, do I need to dramatically go over or go less? So this keeps me with some information. And what I also did, with many thanks, even to Ian, who is here, and to Alan coached me through this minimal music Kyma sound, because I got some money during COVID to have coaching. So I thought, why couldn't I just pay Alan? And then I came on to one of the Kyma evenings. You may have been there too, Simon, where I was trying to puzzle out how to get this minimal music sound to be clear enough to function as I'll get into that later. How are we doing for time? We're okay? Okay.
Yeah, take as long as you like. Yeah.
So then this will tell me what key it's gone to. And the key just, I'll show you the sound later. It just randomly chooses a key. And then it randomly, within a scaled random, chooses a speed. And it randomly chooses sometimes just a microtone on one pitch. So if I don't want to go searching around for which key it is, I can glance down and see where I'm at with that. And the key is a preset in the sound. And this will call the preset. And these two sliders, these are, one is the, oh, this is an old one. Oh, cool. This is the volume of the minimal music. This is the processing reverb, really that beautiful big reverb. But there was one more in there that's a noise that isn't in this screenshot because I put that in later. Oh, so you're seeing a piece in development. Now I have to revise this whole thing for my website. Well, I'm glad we're on tonight so I can point out my own failures. These are the films. So Disgust was the analog synth, Fear was the electric guitar, and those were really jerky. We changed how that would work in the video. Rage was the keyboard. Shame was the bass, the clarinet with the flute combined. And Sorrow was the double bass pits. And then the postlude, I faded the flute and the bass together. And the one thing that's so beautiful about the postlude is at the end of the bass film, he goes like this, almost as if he's saying it's going to be okay, or he's saying I'm going away. But it was such a gesture that was just, we recorded it and that's just what he did. And somehow it came into being such an anchor for that part of the piece. So this is the max patch that runs the piece. All of this node script, JavaScript, if you know, it was a very generous programmer who kept reprogramming the piece. This is what connects to the iPads, which I used when I was still using, because when I brought the solo version, I still used the iPads until I got rid of them. So this is actually non-functional in this version of the piece. It's the video and then all the sections. And so these are I can make that bigger for you. How's that? These are each section. We don't mind doing a little max, or is that a faux pas?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely
okay.
Fine. Yeah.
These are just images of the text that I see. And so this is, the grain, there it is. That's the granular synthesis, which is the third sound in the piece, the noisy sound. And I have volume control over all of them. And then sometimes if I want to just start talking, I can hit a line object, so I can get rid of them in a kind of elegant way. It's basically to keep me off the controller. Yeah. And keep me focused on you. So this is, again, how it looks. Any questions so far?
No, I'll save mine till the end.
Okay. Yeah. And then this is not what I'm looking at, but this is what is also in the Mira app as the sub Mira. This is connecting the Kyma so that so that Max can talk to the Kyma, and then what I'm doing with the apps is I'm using that a little, it's a computer to computer, but I'm using a little router to get there. These are my volumes. This is these two numbers, I'll just say numbers because I'm trying to think of the technical term, integers, yeah, are the minimum and maximum random seconds. So somewhere between there is when the rotation or the panning, and I usually do this in quad, so the audience gets more and more also claustrophobic with this activity. It's gentle claustrophobia. So I can change these depending on the room and depending on how the piece needs to work. This is the envelope of the minimal attack and decay. This is how quickly the key will change. So then I kind of have a pacing feel, and these are all just the scaling of when it will occur randomly, and then the speed of the speed of the actual occurrence of the notes in the minimal music. So keeping going. Now, isn't this a beautiful looking patch with the colors and all the sub patches? So you can basically see how I've set it up, so I have control over my communication with Kyma, going to Kyma. And then this is the Kyma timeline, and I've set it to 20 minutes for this piece. But the piece only lasts it lasted exactly, or maybe it was like 15 minutes.
It was 15, I think.
Yeah, so that I could end the piece and record it and have some time to spare. So these are all the sounds I use, and this is, of course, the recording tracks. And this, thank you, Kyma teachers. I figured most of this out, but then just to get it to function in a beautiful way, I have to say that a community is, for all of us human beings, is such a fantastic resource. These issues, those are when it goes into the microtonal, just one pitch, so that I can play with that. Oh, that's my telephone. Well, so here, this is the sound. And I made a panning version of it, but this was the multi-channel version. And I think it's pretty clear. This is the minimal music, and so this is all the control over the panning. This is the sound, the audio, and this is all of the different controls to the random. Yeah, so here's the quad version. The granular synthesis patch, sound that I use quite often with the flute, looks like this. It's just simply resynthesis using granular synth. Oh, and this is the thank you. And we do need to thank the Dutch funding agencies and the coaches for contributing to my knowledge. Now, shall I take this off and field questions? Okay, I'll stop sharing.
That would be great.
Okay.
So anyone got any questions? I've got some if to want to kick things off. I think what I was kind of interested in, and I think this is just because I know Craig Veer is a member of our community, and he talks a lot about the digital score. I'm intrigued by the way that you maybe in your piece and in the group piece, how you're creating a dynamic score, and how that structure that you talked about, whether it's choosing random pieces, how that came about. I mean, I'm really intrigued by what you said about the way a piece is put together without a climax, but you have a climax. But if you don't, I presumably you're not sure when that climax is going to be. It could be almost at the beginning, in a way. So how did you navigate that, and how did you come to that process of using a digital score?
So there are two questions. One is how did I come about using digital scores altogether? And one is why I would like to have the idea of climax, or the occurrence of climax, be unpredictable.
Yes.
So the digital score altogether means that, because my sense is, if we can evolve in our musical behaviors where we don't have a piece of paper that when we die it has biblical associations, that even if the digital world moves on and your score could die, then it's you're evolving the communication process with many means that we communicate now. For instance, using these gadgets.
Yeah.
And that when we move on, then people will have to refigure how to recreate the piece. And also that because I'm using processing and I'm using devices, to have to then refer back to paper or notation. I don't want a music stand.
Yeah.
I don't want to memorize notes except for maybe I did practice my da 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 every day for a year, so that I could, like, in any key, go da 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 da. But I didn't want to. I don't want to write notes down. I think that I don't have to do that as a composer, just to give people the opportunity to come up with their own resources. And I'm very lucky to play in this group called Maze, because I've had pieces since where they can improvise as if you've written the notes. So that's a luxury.
Yeah.
And as far as climax goes, especially with the ensemble, allowing people to find their way has for me I won't say authenticity, but it has for me a personal, that they personally invest in the performance to find that, because we need some place where things come together. Or because I don't write pieces, I don't construct pieces like Wandelweiser, where everyone can't do a lot of things even though they think they're doing things. You know, I don't set that what are muscle exercises where you go like this against this, those kind of muscle exercises.
Yeah.
I don't, there's a word, it starts with O or something,
Yeah.
but I don't set that up. I set up where there's like an open place to go, and once we find that, then we can go there. And people love doing that, because it's people finding flow. And it's manipulatory. It's a way of manipulating people into almost coming up against, what are we going to do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting way of working. Alan, do you have anything?
I'll try and turn it into a question. It's going to start off as an observation, I think. But I'm just kind of really impressed that it's not as simple. You know, you've got many screens, you've got many, what's going on in the music is complex. The technological kind of interplay of everything is complex. But when you're showing the screenshots of like the Kyma and the Max patches, there's this simplicity, and I'm envious of the simplicity. I guess my question is, like, how'd you do that? Because like you get so much out of these things that look on the screen very tidy and very, very clean.
But the way they interact has a complexity that's basic. And so also with these making pieces, what I do is I set up certain conflicts. Like this piece was, Carla wrote me or said something about cognitive it's like
dissonance.
Dissonance, yeah. So that if we set up a problem, and then I, as the performer, have to bring the solution. You can even set up really simple problems, like, kids. I won't do that. We have to do. I want to do this. I want to do this. I could do this. I couldn't do this. Now you can have days of problems, and someone has to go, okay, now. And so then the performer steers through that. So very, very simple things can grant that space.
That's for a lot of people working on their own in a compositional sense, and sometimes, you know, people feel that their work is deeply personal. When you come to a subject matter that this is about, which is a very harrowing and, you know, very difficult kind of subject matter, to work in a way that is not about the composer, that the way that piece has been made is a collaborative and shared, it becomes a shared experience. It's about sharing that experience. It's about getting different perspectives on that shared experience. Must have been a really intense, I mean, you can kind of put labels on what it might have been, but it must have been a very intense way of working. And I can't imagine the kinds of discussions that you must have had to come up with where the performers have to be to improvise that.
A lot of trust,
Yeah,
among the group, and also we could focus on the art and we could focus on the doing, and that it was a story.
yeah,
It, the it it I the writer was great,
yeah,
because we got together and we talked for about 3 months before I told her about this, because I'd forgotten about it. I said, I want to make a piece about this, and I'd actually forgotten that it happened, or I'd put it very far away. And then we started talking about it, and then I remembered some of these details. And because she's a novelist,
okay,
she could bring the context into a piece of literature, performing literature. And because of this process we went through, she lives in London. She started to take storytelling. She got a degree right after that in storytelling, because she said storytelling on the stage is so different than storytelling on the page, that we fed each other for about a year to develop this.
yeah,
And it was
yeah,
but we finished the piece just as Me Too, just as that Weinstein thing came out.
yeah,
And then to know that I was going to premiere this piece, it came about 8 months after. So it was timely enough, but not in our faces.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a, I mean, Symbolic Sound said it was brutal and beautiful, I think. And yeah, I mean, that's certainly how I felt. It's a wonderful piece. Yeah, really
Thank
wonderful
you.
piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it leaves you, as any good piece should, it leaves you with not lots of questions, but lots of questions about situations, and, you know, reflections on friends and people, you know, you've known, and yourself, and, you know, so
Yeah.
no, it's really good, very good.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Ian, would you like to talk to us about your piece?
Sure. What would you like to know?
The who, the why, the how, and the where. No, I just, well, I again, I really, I mean, I enjoyed all the pieces and they're all so different, and I took from them in different things from different people. And I think what I liked about yours was, I mean, there was lots of things I liked the shifting scales that throughout, as the piece moved through, you went from very intimate to very epic, and back again, and it allowed me, when I was listening to it, to almost I wasn't so led by those moving scales, but I was able myself to move through those scales. And I think I've said this to you since, that it had an evolving kind of helical fluid motion. I know you've talked a little bit maybe about some of the processes that of how that came about. Would you like to talk about that process of creating those different motions and how those motions came to be?
Well, I mean, most of the time when I'm trying to make things, I've, at least in the last couple of years, I've only been making things on a technical level. You know, I've been making the devices or the instruments, and that's been enough, you know, like that's been fulfilling. And I think I've had in the back of my mind that I'd like to use this stuff to make bits of music, but I've had no motivation to, you know, no external motivation to actually do that until now. And I'm glad that it was a thing, you know, I'm glad that I went through the process, but I wouldn't say I found it enjoyable in any way, you know.
Yeah.
I found it very frustrating, and it kind of forced me to kind of confront ideas about, you know, taste and intuition and all kinds of stuff like that, because you're listening to things and judging them in a completely different way from if you were just, you know, demoing your machine or your device or your patch or whatever, and thinking that sounds good or that sounds shit, whatever, you know, like it's a completely different thing. So I kept on working the way I normally work, and it's kind of done in a way where I'm just like, I'll do these recordings of the thing I'm making, even if it's not completed. If I can just get something half decent out of it, I'll be playing it and playing with it and taping it. And then the next time I do a similar thing, could be a day later or a few hours later after I've changed something with the patch. I'll use the material from the recording I just made as the input for the new thing, just because it's there at the, you know, top of the folder, you know, and it's like, okay, well, I've got this thing, and just so it kind of stays interesting, you know. So all that happened was, after you told me about this, I thought, well, this is an opportunity to kind of like try and face those kind of like restrictions of, first of all, time restriction, that you actually have to do this for a certain day, you know, and try to finish something, which is really never tried to do very, you know, with any pressure before. And then second, actually face up to kind of like what this thing will end up being, you know, as a structure or something that occupies a certain space of time in this, you know, YouTube clip or whatever. That's a horrible thing to like face up to as well, you know. So I started judging the stuff I was doing on those terms, and that maybe that's what was so bleak about the whole thing, because it was like coming up short all the time. And eventually I got a recording where I think I'd been, it'd come out like quite intense and quite kind of like quite noisy and quite kind of like full on. And I thought, I wonder if I can get something a lot more sedate. And, you know, that there's obviously maybe something I'd like to include from this, but I don't just want to make some kind of wall of sound thing. I want to have some like structure. I think I'm very suspicious of the conventional ideas about structure, which is not a good thing to have going on in your head when you're trying to make something, because I think you start to learn the value of, you know, even something as basic as like, we're going to start off gently and lead you into something, and then maybe we're going to play with some expectations or something, and then eventually we're going to grow into a situation where there's a lot going on, and then maybe you go through some kind of a journey at that point, and then, you know, you're back in the sedate world, and then just leave you on your pillow wondering what happened, kind of thing, you know. Like, I've always found that those kind of structures incredibly cliched, and even though there's like musicians and composers I know that use those kinds of things, like, you know, things I really admire actually. Being in the situation where I was supposed to deal with those things, I just didn't want to know, you know. But then at the same time, I didn't want to just reject those things for the sake of rejecting them, because that feels like a cop out, you know. That feels like I could just take 20 minutes of a patch that I thought was going nicely and then say, yeah, here's my piece, Simon, you know. So I had to try and deal with those things, and that's what you're hearing is kind of the result of that, you know. I'm trying to use my intuition when listening back to things, and that's one issue. Like, this is not like a live 100% live thing. It's like a thing that's made of 2 or 3 different live recordings that are kind of restructured to give you the thing that you're hearing now.
I think what you have just articulated is I'm sure many people, I can certainly relate to it, is the transition from patch making, which a lot of us do a lot of, you know, we do a lot of patch making, to the actual composition. If the two are separate in any way, it's not, maybe it's not the movement to composition, but maybe it's move from patch making to compositional questions. And like one of the big compositional questions is where to start. You know, that just like you said, you know, do I start slowly? Is it a noise, you know, a wall of sound? Does it go to this? Those are questions about time, you know, and that's a really, it's difficult. It's really difficult because you know, it's you fall back on those cliches just to get the piece out there sometimes. But I don't really think in any way your piece was at all cliched. I think there was some lovely, as I say, there was some lovely sort of relational things that were going on in the patch that I think intuitively or not you heard. And I think the way that you put that together, it had even though they may have been separate things, they definitely all spoke to each other and spoke to the whole piece as well. Does anyone else have any sort of comments or thoughts? Anne?
So what was the last moment where you just let it go? Midnight on the day it was due?
Yeah, kind of like the day before, pretty much.
But
Like,
how'd you get yourself to that place? Like, okay, hands off now.
well, I made 3 or 4 attempts, you know, and almost like, I think at least 3 entirely different bunches of material, and, you know, structures of that material, structures using that material. And this one was, I guess, the main, like what I would think of as the main part of it, which is like maybe the last 2/3 of it. That was something I was, you know, I wouldn't say I'm kind of like 100% behind it, but from the material that I made and could make, it was like, okay, I don't have something to rival this, you know.
And you were finished suffering? You got
Yeah, I mean,
yourself
of
out
course,
the
I was looking
suffering.
forward to the point where I could just put it to bed, you know. Sure. But yeah, when like that, the other thing is that I had to kind of be convinced in myself that there was some kind of conceptual solidarity to the whole thing, and that ended up usually being that it's like there's nothing in there that's not Kyma. There's not a sound in there that it's not generated by Kyma or processed through Kyma, and there isn't a sound in there that I didn't kind of make from scratch, you know.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, at least what it can be is a kind of a record of what I've been up to for the last year or year and a half or something. Like if it can stand for something, it'll be that, and then I'll just be happy, you know.
So what's the title?
The title is Hello Ashen One.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, it's this, yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know if I want to like spell it out and talk about it in detail, you know. But that was another thing that was like tricky. I could say that, you know, that was a difficult thing, because it's like, it's suddenly really precious, you know, like,
A
you know,
title.
well, and even just the doing of it and then putting the name on it, it's like I said, it's kind of like doing something I haven't done before and I hadn't had any reason to do before, and doing something that people have been kind of trying to prod me into doing in some ways, not just Simon, but like, you know, like the idea that you're spending all your time doing this stuff that seems to be making music, but you're not actually making music. You haven't actually made a thing, you know? I felt that kind of as a kind of a bit of a pain over, like, not just even recently, but like over the years, you know?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to have a title that like kind of gave the context somehow.
Like, hello, Ashen One.
Well,
Hello.
yeah, that too, you know? I mean, it's the first title, maybe last title as well. Let's see.
I thought it was really beautiful, and all the harmonics. Just that we were going, oh, what is that? A note, or is that a timbre, or is that? And then we'd settle back and go, well, no, it's just all of this coming and going. So it had so much depth that we could be inside of it. Yeah, it was really beautiful. And then I gave up on not thinking the video was linked to the audio, or that the video was driving the audio or back and forth. I just listened then. But I liked the video.
Yeah, I was really happy with the video. That's the
Yeah.
one thing I was like 100%
All the
behind.
time you were happy. So you
Yeah.
suffer with sound, but
Yeah, the video was, that was sweet. And the video was finished like very soon.
but are they linked?
Yeah, they are linked, but they're
So
not linked in predictable ways.
oh, okay. So one thing will but is the video driving sound, or are they both feeding on each other with interactive data?
I'm just watching Simon now because I know he knows that I don't want to talk about it.
I wondered if somebody else asked
Yeah,
that,
it's
like
like,
you might answer, but
I had
Yeah.
a question and I was not doing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
but thank you. Thanks for listening.
I've got a question. So like, because I think were you I don't know if you're using mostly one patch, but the way you talk about it, it sounds like that. But with the piece like that, does the patch become, like in Kyma, does the sound become the composition? Is it the score? You know, like I think we spend a lot of time in Kyma making things that will be little things that will be usable, like a new kind of effect or something. But is this more like it is the composition, the patch?
Well, I think that a lot of this is associated for me with guilt, you know, like I think if I could improvise a piece into existence in the time it took to listen to it, I'd feel really guilty about that. You know, I don't mean just like if I was playing improvised music with someone. I mean, like if I was going to present it as a piece that kind of like sprang fully formed from my brain and my fingers, and I was capable of doing that, I think I would get to the end of it and feel guilty for not having kind of like suffered through it, if you see what I mean. And I feel like if you work on the system and you know you've achieved something with the system, it kind of gives you that feeling of having made some kind of like step forward, you know, that at least you can kind of like you can have there. But as far as what the relationship between the patch and the piece, if like I think it's different for yourself and probably for everyone in the call in different ways, but like I wouldn't play music to a standard that would be I mean live, play an instrument or even play a Kyma patch to a level that I think people would want to sit and listen to live in a completely kind of like non-constrained live music situation, you know. And I wouldn't put myself forward as a performer that would be worth listening to in that way. And so for me, what I feel like I would like to do, or what I would kind of like aspire to do, not being a musician and knowing that I'm not capable of that, is to at least be able to listen to what these patches are doing. And I've had experiences, for example, listening to musicians that I really admire, not even necessarily musicians, but like music creating people, you know, that are kind of like projecting their music live and controlling it live. And I've thought that if they can have an ear and a hand in the structure as it's coming out, and they can also have a really kind of nice approach to even just things like knowing when a sound is balanced in a nice way. For example, like if you realize at some point that this thing hasn't, you know, you haven't been kind of like hitting people under 400 hertz or something, you know, and then you're aware that that's part of your canvas and you haven't been utilizing it, and then you use that gap as some kind of like impetus for something else to happen, and then it can kind of, I feel like having the awareness of like where all the sound can be in a kind of like, I would think about the frequencies and obviously in a vertical way, and the time as a horizontal kind of thing. Like that's something that you can aspire to, just as someone who's making sounds out of a patch, you know. And I'm not saying that I'm on that level, but I can see at least that yeah, I'd like to be there, you know, and that's something that you can do as someone who just plays patches, you know, and of course makes patches. And it's something that such kind of stuff is on my mind when I'm making the patches, because I wouldn't find a Kyma patch, you know, like promising in that way if it would only produce results in certain parts of the spectrum, for example, you know. And that's one reason, for example, like I find the spectral stuff has a lot of limitations for me, because you can think of a lot of cool things to do with it, and you can find a lot of interesting things to do with what's available to you, but often you feel like there's actually a chunk of the spectrum that's not happening anyway. It's not something controllable anymore using those particular techniques, you know, or it takes at least a lot more skill to be able to bring them in. I don't know, but you know, just for example, I know that's not a direct answer to the question, but I feel like at least that's how I'm judging patches in respect of being able to make something with them, you know, because I want to be able to turn. I don't want to, like, I haven't up until now ever done a thing where I'm using like 6 patches in a multi-grid or something, you know, to make a whole piece or something. I've always been using one thing to do one process, and up until now all I've had going on is like dry wet on the source and the output, you know.
I was going to say it's also, you mentioned that these were chunks of live processing, so it strikes me then that it's not just a press play and sit back kind of thing, that albeit minimally you're intervening in how that sound unfolds.
Yeah, no, they're played like in the way of, you know, moving faders and changing what's going on. Yeah, and I think there's 3 chunks, and then the last part is just a bit of the last part going through the reverb. Yeah. For, you know, just a coda kind of thing.
Cool. Okay. Shall we go, given that we're talking about live processing and doing things live, maybe we'll go to Domenico, and then we'll finish up with Alan, if that's okay. Domenico, refer to my notes here. I need a pair of glasses. I can do that with. Yes, what is real? So do you want to talk a little bit about, because I know, I mean, okay, so let's start off that technically there's a lot going on. You know, you're live coding, and you're live coding in a related Smalltalk environment, and sending that via OSC to Kyma. I mean, I'll let you break that down in a second. Just kind of compositionally, you've also got some visuals there, and you start off with the matrix sample, and I was thinking that it felt to me very much like some like you were deconstructing techno tropes, there's elements of techno there. There's elements of sort of beat-based music there, but it was very deconstructed and it was very sort of pulled apart. How compositionally, how did you was it just an improv in the moment, or is that the kind of thing you've been working on?
It's kind of the thing I'm working on, mostly like this live coding package I did for Faro was intended to be used by me and by all the other people that want to do especially like dance music, okay? Because it's like, you know, this topic about algo rave, okay? So if you have algo rave, you have rave, so you have to dance. So this live coding package was thought to be very like effective for composing music, for programming music on the fly. So this was I would say like a test, okay? A test of what this could be in a club environment or in a warehouse environment or in a live environment or in a real environment. The funny thing is that when we were I didn't want to do this for this performance at the beginning because, as I told you, I was really inspired by your performance of last time, okay? Because I'm not playing any real instrument, okay, classical instrument. So I thought I just turning knobs, basically, on synthesizer, moving the knobs, so moving the mouse, pressing the keyboard. So I think if you have a very massive sound system or very good sound system, you don't care about what you are seeing, okay? But in this case of this live streaming that was made a lot popular during the pandemics, okay, because we couldn't meet in real. And I thought that if you don't have a proper camera setting, if you don't have a proper lighting, and I don't have proper lighting, I'm very dark, you know, here we don't have a ceiling lamp, so it's just poor lighting condition. So I thought it's very it's not good to see. So I thought, okay, you were moving in front of the camera and your composition was about these sensors you were triggering, and I didn't have any sensor, I didn't have time to get them. I thought, okay, I do some kind of video interaction with processing and the Wakinator, this machine learning tool. But unfortunately, processing camera is not working for Catalina and 64 bits max. So I gave up processing. I gave up with the Wakinator, and I thought, okay, I want to do what is. I go back to this live coding stuff that I was preparing. It's there, it's cool. I want to show to also to the people and to the Kyma community this small talk thing that can be cool and you can do this stuff. But then I thought this can be really boring. I mean, I was doing a couple of live streamings, and if you just see the code, okay, this small talk code has a more transparent relation with what is happening. So if you see somebody writing code with tidal cycles or with C sounds, it's more obscure. Okay, with this you see rumba and downbeats and upbeats, and then there is also some obscure hexadecimal kind of writing the rhythms, but it's more transparent. But I want some live, some real element, because I thought that, well, this could be just not be, somebody could think that this is not doing live, okay? So if I show my camera, I'm there and I'm kind of real, okay? I'm kind of live. So this was the thing that at the end was the interaction between Faro, Smalltalk, and Kyma, and Jitter for the visual. So I had Faro sending OSC messages to Kyma. In Kyma, I had just a sound with many outputs going to my real mixer and to my real compressor. Okay, and then in Kyma with the Never Ending Labs Grid send OSC class, I was sending the OSC messages to Jitter, so there was an interaction of what was done in Faro or what was done in Kyma, and what you are seeing is in Jitter. In Jitter was just basically my camera looking at me coding, and as my computer is not so good, it's very old now, it's time to change it, thanks to Tim Cook. So I made very simple, minimal, like the music is very minimal, the coding is very minimal, and in a way also the visual are very minimal, because it's just jitter metrics being processed by some bitwise operators and triggered by Kyma events. So it's very minimal. And I didn't want to rehearse too much, because I want to be real. Okay, so I record one time. The first recording, something happened at the end and it was not good. So I decided to make another one, and it was recorded just 2 times. And so it's really live, and it's not like I had something in mind, but I didn't want to have too much in mind.
Yeah. I must admit, I remember I've seen a number of live coding things, and you're right. I think when it's in most of those have been in actual kind of club situations. So I hadn't noticed that it was a different experience, but then when I watched yours on video, I was much more drawn in to what was going on the screen. And and also it becomes a little puzzle that you're kind of trying to work out. For me, didn't know what was really going on, but you kind of understand certain things that you're doing, like you'll take some out and it goes, oh, you've cut that or whatever. I actually found that quite sort of mesmeric, as well as listen, and especially with the music being the way it was. You do set up a kind of a dialogue between what's being coded and what you're hearing. And yeah, I think the pacing of that really kind of helped. And then as you say, the video, it being a video piece rather than a club piece. I really like that. Did anyone else have any feelings or thoughts they wanted to?
I had feelings. It was really great. I mean, you might have kind of already said this, but I've watched a few other kind of live coding things, because the idea just sounds so cool. And I think, part of the idea is the transparency. It's like seeing a thing being made in front of you, which is like the excitement of performance in a way. But they've always really left me kind of really cold, because I can't, it's just so complex and I can't really understand what's going on. And although it's trying to be transparent, it ends up being quite opaque, because it's like, are they just playing a CD or something? I can't see any connection. But with what you did with Domenico, I mean, maybe it's because I know a little bit of Smalltalk, but even still, I think there's something about Smalltalk being so terse and so kind of readable that, and the way you were interacting with it, you weren't like you weren't suddenly copying and pasting in enormous amounts of code. You were interacting with the same sort of phrases over and over. It felt like you were playing it. You could really see when you did a thing, I heard a thing. I believed you were doing it in that moment. And it became a kind of transparent performance. It was like, oh yes, this is what live coding should be like. This is really great.
Yeah.
I'm happy about this, because this was the main intent, as everybody here, we love Smalltalk, no? I think. And we are kind of, we want to show to the people that Smalltalk is really cool and you can do a lot of stuff, and that coding is not so hard at the end, And of course, it can be really hard and it can be really pain in the ass, and you can do very complex stuff. But with this kind of high level layers, it's like Kyma, You can, if you have Kyma, you can make a sound when you get it, just open a sound, type in something and do the sound. Then you can do more complex things and do the tools and do timelines and everything, but you can just interact. And like the Copy Talk is very transparent and Smalltalk is very transparent, and I like the idea to show to the people that you can do music with the code, that it has not to be so abstract and so obscure, but it can be very like iconic. And Smalltalk is also like economic, because you can write very short expression and statements. So I think it goes very well with this like coding stuff. And I was happy of the result. Then I was doing the week after, I was doing a live coding, expanding this piece in a real environment in Milan, at a night called Cyberspeak Potential, that was part of the Wrong Biennale. And what I liked is that some people at the end of the performance came to me and said me, but you were typing rumba, you were typing bomba, you know, and there was the sound of the snare coming to the rumba, you know, and you were really doing that live. Yeah, I was really do this live. Kind of getting the people involved I was really happy.
Yeah, it was very good.
I loved it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was at a live coding event or set yesterday. And so you're right, the visual, because he's also a visual artist. So he had visuals going on behind the text too, because he's a Java. He's a fancy Java guy, and it was in Max what he was doing. But the repetition is also what we need when we see it, that we keep seeing the same thing. So we go, and you go back, and that helped me really stay engaged. But the one thing I wondered, also from seeing the live coding last night, what happens to you, like physically or your body, when you decide to move on? Because you know you get it set up and you're having all this like adrenaline running through, all those great things running through your hands of excitement. Your feet are kind of going like this, and then it stays stable. And so what gives you, is it that you look at it and go, now what could I do here? Or you step back and you kind of groove with it and then you have a decision?
It's really difficult, because being used to play with machines that do the things alone, you know, a sequencer, a groove box is going, you just turn the knobs, it's not so, you don't have to be so concentrate like playing an instrument. Okay, the machine is going to the beat, it's not giving up the tempo. Okay, so, and you can dance and you can move more, but staying in front of the computer and typing, you have to stay more quiet. But so yes, there is this kind of tension between the screen and the hands and the keyboards, and is mirroring what is happening in the sound. And if you have people in front of you, is mirroring what you have in front of the people, like something very simple, like muting the bass drum. You mute the bass drum, then the people want the bass drum, and you typing the bass drum again, maybe with some more rolls and some extra stuff, and you see the connection of what you're typing and what is happening.
But in this situation,
yeah,
you weren't able to read the room.
Yeah.
So what was going on with you then, making this video?
It was more like reading the sound. So I was like enjoying and going with the flow of the rhythm. So trying not to stay too much still. I was really enjoying, drinking some beer before and trying to have fun doing that. So it was not
so it's in a way it's very intuitive. You don't say, okay, this feels like 3 minutes, maybe I should let this go longer. It's very like, all right, now it's time.
Yeah, something like you try to build some kind of climax and anticlimax, and having more even more minimal parts. And sometimes what I want like to hear me and who is hearing what is happening to the sound. So if there was this kind of FM bass, so if I leave just the FM bass, I can play with the modulation and you can hear the modulation. If there is too much things, you cannot hear the modulation. So it was the interplay of make the sound speaking and the interaction between the speaking, the sound and the composition.
So what happens when you turn something on that you hate? It doesn't work. Do you make it work after that? How do you get yourself out of that situation?
It's when it happens, I try to make it work.
Like a jazzer.
Yeah,
there are no mistakes. It's all gonna work.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, you have this pad, okay, going on, and I was typing like the frequency of the LFO, and I didn't want to have like any kind of translation and write 120 BPM or 150 BPM or whatever. I just want to type the numbers and hear what was going on and then adjusting to go with that. So it's a little bit, many things, you know what is happening. Okay, so even when I was writing these hexadecimal strings, okay, in this live coding package, you can translate this an hexadecimal string to a pattern. So like 888, 8 is in binary is 10000 1000 100, that is like downbeats. So if I write 8888, it's bam 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 bam. But if I write 888F, is bam 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 bam. So something I know what is happening, and something I'm just typing and see what is the result.
Fantastic. Thanks, Domenico.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a really good piece. And again, like, thanks for explaining all that was going on. And there was a lot, sounds like there was a lot going on. So Alan, the sound finder, Alan Attenborough, I think was mentioned. I loved. I mean, so I think the questions I think I've got. I mean, it was called excerpts. So is there more? Do you want to talk us through what the CD was and what the was about, and then also maybe the choice of black and white and color, and some of the cinema, because there was a lot of cinematography and there was a lot of kind of very visual decisions, and then also just talk about, I mean, I think you know the piece was kind of fairly self-explanatory, but maybe go into a bit of why you made it.
I'd say one question at a time on my head.
Okay, why'd you make it?
I was going to start with the first one because I don't know the rest, but the CD. So I went on a sort of field recording course with Jez Riley French really kind of recently, and that kind of really kind of blew my mind in a way, and got really into this durational recording and started dragging the field recorder out into the woods and just listening to things. But as kind of part of that, and because I was spending more time outside, there's all these birds, and I don't know anything about birds apart from they have wings and stuff. So I kind of got myself this CD from the British Library. Where's the camera? But it's like British birds sound on CD, thinking that I'd listen to this and I'd memorize all the birds songs, and then when I go out I could be all knowledgeable. I'd go, oh, that's a magpie or something. So I put it on, and I didn't do that. I didn't just sit there studying it and listening to it, but I found it kind of really soothing and interesting that you just have this kind of very dry voice going, the lark, or whatever it is, and then you'd have something tweet, 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 tweet. And that's kind of really where that sort of conception came from, for like, oh, I could do a field recording of a thing that I'm you know, trying to tell a story about in a way. And so like right from the start, I was kind of imagining that it was this CD, but for these kind of endangered species. And that's why I felt like I actually wanted to make the CD, at least kind of fake it in a way. So I kind of printed up the cover for it and put it on a CD, and then kind of photographed it to sort of say as if it existed. And that's kind of also why I called it excerpts. Whether I'll do more, I kind of, in one hand, sort of felt like, yeah, I could do a whole sequence of these, or maybe I won't. I don't know. But the idea behind it was imagine that this was an excerpt from this pretend CD. Why did I make it? Well, it's a
sorry, it wasn't. I didn't mean a why. I mean, you've just kind of explained the why. Yeah, I don't need to. Yeah, I mean, unless you. Yeah,
because you asked me to. No.
Why? Well, yeah. So okay. Well, why were you driven to?
What was I doing? Well, it's. I mean, it's a couple of things. I mean, there's an environmental message that was kind of coming across, or that I was trying to sort of talk about in a way, and it was. I was trying to think of a way of dealing with kind of existential angst in a way. So I was a technique I've kind of used in the kind of work situations before, when people are kind of struggling, when facilitating kind of group decision-making processes, and you're kind of struggling with thinking, how are we going to do, what are we going to do next, is to kind of imagine you're at the end. Imagine you've got to success and you're looking backwards from success. How did you get here? And that can suddenly kind of, this change of perspective can suddenly unlock kind of group decisions and stuff. And I kind of was thinking about there, it's like, well, I'm imagining a future where society, the world, does all the right things, and we live a happy life in a kind of a rich environment that isn't completely degraded and fallen apart. And if we've done that and we look back, we'll realize that cars don't exist anymore, or at least the cars that we have can't exist anymore. They can't be there. That means that in an optimistic future, the petrol car is endangered now. So really, knowing that this is going to happen, having full faith that this is the path that humanity will choose, we better go out and record them all while we can, because they won't be around much longer. Even though they look like they're everywhere, let's imagine a scenario in which they're actually endangered. So that's kind of the route. I mean, the other thing I'd say is, like, I mean, if you, you've hung out with me and stuff before on the Catch and Start. I like to be kind of a cheery person, I suppose. Maybe I giggle a lot, but I'm angry about stuff. And I think I really struggle to kind of unite these ideas. Like, how can I be all nice and happy while at the same time be really cross? And like, this is really rubbish. And so I think that's what I was sort of trying to do. And that's sort of the thing between the color and the black and white as well, is on one level, the color is me being my silly self. It's look at me pretending to be Alan Attenborough and crawling through it was actually funny when we were down the track doing this, my wife was doing all the filming for me on my camera, and I was crawling about. I was being such a prima donna as well. I was shouting, no, don't hold the camera like this. But she was actually right all the time. But we're on this path, and this old lady drove her car, because she had a driveway down this path that we were on, and she drove and saw us and stopped. And then she kind of rolled down the window and said, are you pretending to be on safari? What did she say? Are you pretending to be in the jungle? And it's like, you got it. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. She went, good-o. And then but that was kind of me trying to do my, like, the silly bit. And then the black and white bit was sort of like me thinking of like kind of Indonesian shadow puppetry or something like that, where like, there's a style of puppeteering where, it's all illusion, where you can't see the person holding the strings, that they're out of shot. And the illusion is trying to be the perfect illusion where the puppet is like alive. But then there's the other kind of style where the puppeteer is in shot. You can see them, but they're dressing down. They're dressing in black. They're sort of saying, yeah, I'll be a bit transparent about the process, but I'm not the center of attention here. It's the puppet, but you can still sort of see me. And that's kind of what the black and white thing was trying to do as well. It's like, because this is a Kyma concert and everything, I want to show you how the sound is being made. And I want to convince you that the sound's kind of live. It's actually being performed. It's not sort of recorded in that way. But at the same time, pretend I'm not here. I'll dress down and I'll do it in black and white. And, you kind of want to see me doing it, but I kind of want you not to as well. So I struggled with the kind of, I could have just not been there at all. But I thought it's kind of, in this context, a bit interesting to see how the sound is being made.
So just on a maybe technical note, I think Symbolic Sound was there some RE synthesis, and what processing were you using for the you had Wii controllers, didn't you? What were you playing there?
Oh, I think unlike Anne's sound, I just like piled all the things into a great big patch of madness. No, I've been thinking about sound as like flavors. And so I kind of think of like sound as having 5 flavors, like there's kind of 5 tastes sort of thing. Where you kind of like the obvious, you know, you got pitch, volume, timbre. If you've got control over pitch, volume, and timbre, you can play improv. You know, you can fit in with sort of anything. So you got pitch, volume, timbre, and then space. There's this kind of, you know, what we put reverb on for, to kind of put a sound in a space. And then this other one I came up with recently, which kind of imame, is this kind of idea of, I don't know what to call it, evoke. I call it evoke, but it's what I mean. But that's where sample playing would fall in. So like you could do all these things with like just a waveform that I've said so far, but you could also play a whole sample, a recording of a thing, which suddenly evokes a whole sense. And what I wanted to do in this is really do all of, you know, make a sound that could do all of that, so I could just sort of express in the moment, with the exception of space. So it deliberately has no reverb on it. That's the one thing I want to take out, because I wanted it to be situated. It's something that fascinates me generally, and I've been doing anyway, which is kind of that juxtaposition of kind of taking technology out into the woods, and that kind of interesting jarring between the natural and the kind of artificial. But I thought it particularly kind of also worked in this thing where you've got this pretend sort of animal thing that's out there. So I wanted to record it as an animal. So I hung speakers up in trees and I recorded it over the air. And so I deliberately wanted to not put any kind of spatial treatment on it, and to just inherit all of the space from the environment, to try and kind of situate the sound even more. I mean, really, I should have used a Bluetooth speaker strapped to a lion or something, but I don't really like Bluetooth. I like wires better. So I kind of strung the speakers up in a tree, but yeah, so okay, that maybe was avoiding your question, but what kind of things were in it? Granulation. I'm not so big at the moment on random or stochastic processes. I don't know why, but they make it feel like it's not me. So even at granulation, I like repetitive, regular granulation, you know, like taking a sample, a buffer. And this is what I was doing a lot. I was live recording a 2-second sample and then narrowing the window down to get like a grain out of it. But this is a repetitive grain. It's not like a grain cloud, which is statistically sort of doing it. And then I did some filtering and stuff on that, which had some vocal, like vocal format filtering and things like that on it.
Cool. I did have some. Oh yes, you were using a headset mic to. That was, and it was the voice was the input. It's just when you said about putting it out in the. There's that technique of reamping.
Yes,
you know, the guitarists use, but I don't know why, but I was thinking it's almost like rewilding. So you're rewilding your sound. It's the wrong use of the phrase, but it kind of fits in your context.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any thoughts?
Mine is more a request. I would like to have more sounds from more urban animals.
The gas boiler, that might be
yeah. I think you've got some. Yeah, the gas boiler would be one.
Coal power plant.
Yeah.
The petrol station.
The petrol station. But yeah, I actually have a list of about 50.
I was really surprised because when we are began, and I know that you like to stay in the nature, and I thought it was really about animals, living creatures, and it was so funny to see that it was about the car. It was really unexpected.
Yeah,
and it was beautifully filmed as well.
Yes,
it's very like professional.
Yeah, very professional. You could.
I will tell my wife.
It could be aired on MTV. Is that still MTV?
I tell you, it's a real eye opener. Like editing the video, because like the video has all the original sound on it, which I'm kind of cutting out. So like the full videos that I'm chopping down have me shouting and screaming at at my wonderful camera woman, and it's like, oh, it's so embarrassing. Is that what I'm like? Oh god.
You should do another piece using all that stuff.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Prima donna. God, it was awful. So yeah, she'll be very pleased you said that. Thank you.
You can use that in the couples counselling.
Yes. This is what he's really like.
Yeah.
Did she yell back?
not yell, but made it clear that I was
Yelling.
I was being a pain in the backside.
One thing I really liked, because I was looking at it as if I didn't understand it, and it takes a long time to understand what's going on. Just looking, going, so what's this guy doing? I don't know what he's doing. What is this? I don't know what that is. What's he waving around in his hands? And because I've tried to look at it as someone not from the community, but because we've seen everyone waving Wii controllers now for quite some time. And so we think we know that that's what you do with a Wii controller. You don't even use it for your TV. You use it with your Kyma. And so everything that you introduced, if we didn't know about that culturally, it was incredibly mysterious to me. And also then the change of color. I started thinking about South Pacific. Do you remember that movie where they went from black and white to color, and it was also about the war and the past and that kind of conflict. So it brought up all kinds of different stuff, and I enjoyed remaining not getting it for a very long time, for the whole thing. And that, you know, the round, just all that stuff, that paraphernalia that we're, or even a car. What is that? So I thought it left us hovering. If you showed it to someone not in the Kyma community, you could hover, and you could probably do a whole seminar on endangered species with the mystery of what we don't see.
Yeah, and you've just reminded me of that process. It's because it's that first time watch, isn't it? And it was a long time in there. It did unfold, and also, and I think the reason when I was writing notes when I first watched it was the CD really threw me.
Yeah.
So I mean that was another curveball right at the opening, and then you're sort of led into this, and then you're right. It was the unfolding of it was a beautiful composition. Yeah.
The use of Kyma processing wasn't in any way heavy-handed, you know. Unlike my process, you know, it was really, really subtle and complementary, you know.
Really, I thought it was really Kyma-ish to me. It was. But then I guess we've been working with granulators and stuff for ages, so it sounded like that stuff. But
and you didn't clean it up. You just left stuff in there, so it was nature.
Yeah, I love the nature that was in there. You know, it's kind of because the speakers aren't really good. Because I carried all of this for about an hour for several miles.
I suppose you didn't have your wife carry any of it.
No, because the color stuff that she helped me with was sort of down near the house. That wasn't too far. But for the black and white stuff, I kind of went on a trek.
Otherwise, she'd have been carrying them.
Yeah, she'd be carried out. That would have been maybe a bit mean, but there was a thing about that. It was like I was looking for a good location, and I kept finding good locations, but I realized it wasn't just about the location. Like I had to arrive as well. I don't know if that makes sense, but so it's like I had to walk uphill for an hour to get to the right place. In me, I think more than physically. There were several other woods that would have probably worked on the way, but. So it was a bit of a kind of a trek in. So I can't really carry very big speakers. They're a bit quiet. And the upshot of that is that, you know, the crows are louder than what I'm doing. And I kind of like that. And they also, wildlife doesn't seem to really care about what I'm doing. That's what I've noticed. You know, the squirrels have come up, you know, and doing weird speaker experiments in the woods. The animals seem to love it. It's not like you're really annoying them. they just get used to you after a while and carry on doing their thing, and so they become part of the piece, which I quite like.
No, it's great. Great. Okay, I'm gonna probably wrap it up there. Thanks everyone for submitting, working hard on those pieces, and agreeing to chat and go through all your process in everyone's very different sort of pieces. So hopefully we'll have another Toe and Shell with maybe different lineup, maybe some similar people in the future. But yeah, thanks again for all your time and work, and I know it'll be greatly appreciated when we get this up on YouTube properly. So thanks very much. Take care, everyone, and cheerio.